Hey there, welcome to another edition of Cambridge Inside Out. My name is Robert Wieners.
Judy Nathans,
And what's today's date, Judy?
December 5th.
2000, look at that, I almost said 19, right?
Oh,
2017. Yeah,
Yeah.
all right. Anyway, we're sort of back in business. The elections have kind of subsided in importance.
Yeah, well, we talked about them last week.
We had our election binge
Yeah.
last week, so
Yeah.
I won't do much of that this week.
Yeah.
And we're in for the very, very last month of the 2016,
The lame duck, we call them
17.
lame ducks?
Well,
Is that appropriate? Not really,
No, I think
because some of
it's
them
for-
come back.
I think when you're talking about one individual,
It's a
who
lame
is,
duck. They're
then
out.
he or she is
Yeah.
the lame duck, right? But we have 9 city councilors, 6 of whom will be returning, and 3 new people.
Right.
And it's interesting. This is one of those very rare moments when there's not a single council committee scheduled.
True.
All right.
Well, it's also the holidays. It's Thanksgiving
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
Christmas. It's New
Well,
Year's. It's
I mean,
crazy.
I guess sort of on the bright side, people might say, well, that maybe they've completed most of the significant things, and whatever the committees were up to, they sort of came to some sort of
Yeah.
fruition.
But isn't it more because they don't want to make any big decisions before the new people get in? Because it's...
Well, it's in some years they actually want to
Really?
make big decisions
Oh.
before the new council gets
Oh.
in. Like, for example, if there was a very controversial zoning vote and people
Well,
felt
that's,
that the
that's
zoning
true.
might go the other way,
Well, also if there's a deadline.
and it could be a deadline.
Yeah, I
and
mean, that I think is a
yeah,
little
I mean,
different.
I don't know that it's necessarily the case, but
Yeah.
or maybe it is actually that had the Volpe rezoning
Oh,
come to a vote in
Yeah.
January, the result might have been different, right?
maybe not.
Yeah, well, the thing is, if
Yeah.
even if something goes like 8-0, it might be 8-0, but if you had enough critical mass to oppose
True.
it, then it might be a movement to oppose.
Good point.
So things
Well,
like that can
I'm
happen.
glad that isn't happening because we got enough coming up.
Yeah, so things are sort of settled down. So this
Yeah.
Cambridge City Council had a meeting last night, the December 4th meeting.
Not very long, so
Not
by
very-
8, right?
Was it?
I don't know, 8.
I was there, but I wasn't really
Yeah.
watching the clock.
Yeah.
But relatively short agenda. But there's one of these kind of weird paradoxes. Sometimes when there's a short agenda, some individual items become the subject of great pontification.
The abutter thing. Well, that was more in public comment.
Yeah,
Not the abutter, the curb cut.
right.
application.
Yeah, there was
Yeah.
one thing. For most of us who are looking at kind of more policy-related things,
Yeah.
a lot of things that just sort of go almost unnoticed. So.
Yeah.
There's some development proposal down in East Cambridge, and they brought out a whole slew of people from the public to
Well,
speak.
that's because
in
it's been
support.
going on back and forth. The
Yeah.
CVS wants to build there, and they have to do curb cuts.
Yeah, so it looked like they came to some resolution. Most of the
Yeah.
residents were speaking very, very well
Right.
of the process,
Right.
so I think that was. I don't actually know what came to a vote, if anything, or whether it was just a setup.
It was not contentious. I remember that.
Yeah,
I think, so.
yeah.
Or don't they pull things to discuss them, and if they're not, then they're passed on or
For
accepted,
the
or you
most
have to
part,
vote?
yeah.
So I think it wasn't.
Yeah. So anyway, there was a few things. There's one pending zoning thing having to do with innovation
Alexan-
space with Alexandria. So
Yeah,
that's
Craig had a
pending.
few things to say about that word, right?
Right. So I think they were just sort of getting it in the queue, so it'll get voted before
Yeah.
everything's done. That's really a formality at this
Okay.
point. I think that'll be like probably a 9-0 vote.
Okay.
One of the more interesting things that was on, it was a small matter, very
Yeah.
small. It was on the agenda. This was the meeting where the election commission officially sends
Oh.
to the city council the for the official record
Yeah.
the result of the election.
Right.
So there was the city council election results as well as the school committee
Right.
election results, which includes, in addition to I guess they do the round by rounds. Is part of the official record, and they also put I think the ward and precinct information as well. But I just happen to know, because I know a thing or two about the tabulation software, that there was an error in the order of election.
How did that happen?
I know exactly how it happened.
Tell us.
All right. So, because it was actually announced incorrectly when the
I remember
elections
that,
were done, actually
yes.
multiple times.
I know,
Um,
and also published places.
Right.
Yeah.
So the way the election tabulation software works, it actually prints out essentially like little finished web pages for each of the rounds. So what the election commissioners or the person who's making the announcement typically does, it goes to the final page when it has all the 9 winners. But here's the catch.
Yeah.
So it it inserts the names in the order of election,
Right,
but
yeah.
if more than one person is elected during a round, it inserts them in alphabetical order at the top, not in the actual order of election.
Oh,
The thing, what the election commissioner should be looking at is actually
Yeah.
at the bottom of the page where it
Yeah.
actually, it writes a line whenever an event happens in the process. So when somebody reaches quota, it says so-and-so has been elected,
right,
and then the next person reaches quota, so-and-so has been elected, so
Right.
that's written chronologically. So, and this has actually happened.
Yeah.
This
Is
has
that the
happened
first one?
before.
Okay.
So the person just reads it from the top of the page and reads that as if it's the
Oh.
order of election, but it's not.
Huh.
So I
And then
knew
it
that.
got printed. It's one thing to say it, but then to print it.
Yeah, it
is
was
not
printed
good.
and signed and delivered to the city
Yeah.
council for the
Wow.
official record. So I wasn't trying to be a pest, but the thing is that
No, it should
I always
be-
feel like I'm a
yeah.
foot soldier for the city clerk,
Right,
and who is an absolute stickler that the
Yeah.
public record be absolutely right and accurate
Right.
for all time, right?
yeah.
So it was sort of a courtesy. I said, well, this is actually has a minor error.
Uh-huh.
So when I showed up for the city council meeting last night, there was a supplemental agenda item, a piece here with a
Did
correction.
you have to
from the
show
election
her
commission.
why it was an error? Or
No,
did
I
she just
think
accept your,
what happened is some of the people, I think, from the election commission,
They also had no.
yeah, so they know me, and they know that if I'm writing it, that I wasn't just kidding.
Right,
So what they did was they actually sent out
Oh, good.
an amended certification of
to
election
Donna, to the.
to the city council,
Okay,
which would
thanks.
then go on as the official record to check. The little change was a very tiny thing,
It's
but
just
it
a
was
reversal, two people.
yeah, it just had being elected fifth or sixth. They had it as Alana Mallon being elected fifth, followed by Quentin
Right,
Zondervan,
and it was reversed.
and it was actually
Yeah.
Quentin was the one who reached quota during that round first. Quentin didn't even know about this. You know, he actually
Yeah,
sent
it's
me
funny,
email
yeah.
during the day and says,
Really?
"What's this about?"
He didn't know until,
No,
Really?
no.
because I knew last
well,
week, didn't
yeah.
I?
Yeah, I mean, it was.
Maybe I knew
anyway.
because I read your stuff, yeah.
Anyway, so that was actually a tiny agenda item, but it was
Yeah.
kind of fun to sort of be involved in that. One of the things I guess sort of is something that resonates with the two of us because of our long and storied history with recycling. It was that actually I'm gonna
What are you showing?
do something that's sort of funny.
Oh, worms eat my
Yeah,
garbage.
yeah, it was funny. I
Oh,
was
no, that's not, that's.
they have these book exchange, corrals down in Kendall Square and elsewhere. And I was going by there yesterday, and what do I
That was
see?
there?
I see, in addition to a few other books, I love to grab books there.
Yeah,
There was one here, it was like a little booklet on
Yeah.
backyard composting, and I had to laugh when I saw this because,
you wrote that?
no, I didn't,
Oh.
but these were distributed in Cambridge back when we got these Earth Machine composters, which I think dates back to about 1994.
Before Randy?
Yeah, long before, yeah.
Really?
And I,
Not too long.
and I was, we got started, Cambridge Recycling Incorporated was putting out compost bins there, I
Yeah.
think around 1992. And so this book was likely given out by me. So
Yeah.
so there it was in the little bin.
what's
I said,
the
"No,
actual
it's
date
coming
on
back to me." This is published in 1992.
Wow.
But it was kind of funny just to find
Yeah.
out. But speaking of composting, not necessarily backyard composting.
No, the curbside.
Yeah, so
Because that was a policy order last week or two,
yeah, just
no,
to
two-
get
it
some
was actually-
information
yeah.
and update.
and then they did from
Yeah.
Luigi's, it was actually from the consultants about, it's that one-page thing, if you look at the agenda.
Right.
And didn't really cause that many comments except from Craig,
Right.
who
And by the way, the announcement is just basically nothing new. It's just saying is that we're going to
It's
start
gonna roll
organics
out,
collection in March,
April, probably, yeah,
April-ish, right?
April, probably,
April, yeah. And it'll
12
be
units and under.
12 units in it, but it's still a lot. It's a pretty
Well, the
sizable
whole
chunk of the
city, I mean, right now it's
Yeah.
just on Monday trash routes, so.
Right, so it'll be all across
Yeah.
the city. And a lot of people looking forward to it, but there's some logistical details to be worked out.
Yeah,
I think right now it's collected by Save That Stuff.
right, but
And
this,
when
it's gonna be in-house.
It'll be in-house, so it'll be DPW workers.
Right, it's still gonna go to Save That Stuff though,
Right.
because
Yeah.
they have the deal with waste management.
Apparently the material gets sort of slurry.
Slurried, it's a huge, think of it as, Rob Gogan told me this one, but think of it as a huge garbage disposal.
Right.
Because that's really what it is.
Garbage.
Yeah,
Food
but-
waste is
yeah.
garbage.
And then that slurry is then put into a tanker, I forget, a big tanker that goes maybe once a week, up to Lawrence, Greater Lawrence,
It's an
water.
MWRA.
Well, it's a water treatment facility. We have one at Deer
Right.
Island, but
Right.
they don't
But they
want
have
more trucks going to Deer Island.
Right.
No, they have the capacity there,
Right.
but the town of Winthrop does not want more trucks. I mean, the state wanted to send, that was their plan, to have,
Right.
to use that the anaerobic digesters there, but until they can figure out how to get it out there without trucking it through, it's going up to Greater Lawrence, so.
Right. So anyway,
But we found out, and I don't know why I didn't, that the compost bins have RFIDs,
radio frequency identification, the
Right.
RFID chips in them.
which a lot of actually, I don't know about our toters, but some around the state have those in them to keep track of them.
Yeah.
But we have them, and that rang a real
It
red
was-
flag for one of our counselors.
It was
Yeah.
kind of funny.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really just there just so they can kind
Well,
of
I
gather
don't know.
statistics.
Although, right, except that they do know who they gave that
Who
bin
had,
out to and who
Right.
isn't putting it out.
right.
And then Owen was there to
Owen
represent,
O'Riordan,
obviously,
Commissioner of Public Works.
to try to explain how they use it, but Craig really didn't like it at all.
It was sort of an unfortunate juxtaposition
Yeah,
in it.
Because it was because his surveillance.
Yeah, there was and
We're laughing. It's not really funny,
right.
but
Last night
yeah.
there was also a committee report from
Right.
the Public Safety Committee, which is the one chaired by Craig Kelly,
Right.
and it was a report on really a preliminary report
Right.
on.
Should we have an ordinance on surveillance? It was more
yeah,
like
it
looking
wasn't
at
actually an ordinance that's in
No,
place,
it wasn't.
but it's
looking
it's
at-
some
yeah.
components that may one day get cobbled
Lead to.
into a combination of best practices, ordinance,
Or maybe
etc.
right.
But it's just really at this point more of a conversation.
Exactly, and it
But
did draw a couple people out
Yeah,
to
there
public
were
comment.
people there for public comment.
So
And,
this just was right in that.
so it was
in that
because of the
alleyway.
juxtaposition, the
Right.
notion that there would be
Yeah.
ID things in the
Yeah.
recycling.
It was unfortunate,
Right.
and then he mentions rats. So it was those two things really not putting it off to a good start.
not
I hate to say
necessarily,
it,
yeah. I mean, I think it'll be very, very popular. I think
I
even
hope so.
people are
Well, the
already
people that
interested
really
in
want it, and they already have their iPhones and everything else. They know people are tracking them. So
Yeah.
you know, unless you're going to be completely off the grid, it's all for the good. And you know, I don't think anyone's gonna. I don't think the Russians are going to come after that info.
Yeah, you know, one thing that the commissioner said was
Yeah.
I was a little confused by, and
Yeah.
I think maybe he was right, but I was confused.
Yeah. What did he say?
I thought, you know, when you roll out a new thing like organics collection, I don't like it when they call it compost collection, because compost is really what it's the material in process. You collect
Right, but it
organic
is what
material.
you're putting in to be composted. So
Right.
it's technically it's food scraps
Right, yeah,
or waste.
garbage, yeah,
Well, no, not garbage.
right?
No, you can't say garbage. Sometimes it's a whole chicken or something that someone
Right.
didn't cook, but you could put it in there.
Yeah,
But anyway, let's.
yeah.
So what did he say that bothered you?
No,
That word-
it's not
oh, just
just
that
bothered me,
word.
it
Oh.
perplexed me, because I
Oh.
remember when we first rolled out curbside recycling,
Yes.
prior to the curbside recycling, we had
Yeah.
to pass a mandatory recycling
Oh, right.
ordinance.
Yeah.
And it said, well, this is not just an option, you know, you actually are obliged. I don't know how many tickets they ever wrote anyway.
Well, no, that famous photo of Janissetti on the front of the Chronicle.
that she was like, you know, like poking through
poking
people's
something,
stuff.
and that did it. They didn't actually enforce any of that. It was supposed to be a
Then that
$25
pretty much
fine.
ended it,
That
yeah.
ended that.
Actually, I know the two
um,
people who sort of were
Yeah.
bothered
behind
about that, yeah.
Yeah. So that sort of.
So, but
it is
anyway,
mandatory, but unless there's enforcement.
right,
just
what
so
I
you
didn't
know.
understand
Yeah.
until Owen said it, and
Yeah.
I'm not questioning his
Yeah.
the veracity of his statement, was that
Yeah.
said that, you know, because my understanding is that when we passed the mandatory recycling ordinance,
Yeah.
there was this notion about what the materials that were being collected were. I didn't know that if you started adding things like organics collection, that would fold into the mandatory recycling provision. As
Well-
opposed to just be a nice program that people will love, and
It
if
is
they want to do it.
recycling in a way, but
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
diverting that material into something else, which is
Right.
So I don't know. I mean, that
Right.
maybe is just.
I mean, I think people should look at it more
Yeah.
like, we're doing you a favor,
Yeah.
making this available to you, so you should just do it. And
By
not
the way, the
focus on it.
mandatory. I mean, there was a statewide ban on those materials in landfills. So we adopted
So that-
mandatory, but it really
Yeah.
came from the state. Just like there is for bigger generators a ban on food waste in.
Well, that's actually what drove the
Exactly.
mandatory recycling in the first place, is they were
Right.
starting these
Exactly.
sequential
Right.
bans at landfills for
Right.
white goods.
We're one of
and
the few
first-
states
yeah.
actually that has that 50 or whatever hospitals and stuff have to divert their.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that, so we'll follow that along and see
Yeah.
how it's going.
Some of us will continue to just do the composting in our own backyards.
Well,
Not whole chickens.
so you're gonna be like Craig?
I think.
Because you're not a vegetarian.
No.
You
but-
can put napkins, you can put bones, you can, I freeze my things and then I take it. Oh, by the way, if anyone is composting now, you can no longer go to the Prospect Street Whole Foods. They've done it for years, allowed residents to use but now it's something to do with the Department of Health or something. So now it's in-house, but you still can go to the Winters Market, Cambridge Community Center,
Yeah.
Danahy Park, the drop-off,
Well, of course, I don't know if
So
this
there's-
is, but I could always speculate that
what?
since Amazon now runs Whole Foods.
Oh, no.
Well, they're actually putting in things like lockers and things, so they're
Yeah,
trying
this
to
was
make-
only Prospect Street Whole
Oh,
Foods.
okay.
None of the others did this for the city.
I remember when it used to be Food Shack 2.
I remember it was Bread and Circus.
Before Red the Circus,
Food
it was
Shack
Food
2?
Shack
Are
2.
you kidding me?
No,
That
I remember.
location?
Where I lived, that was
Oh,
the place
wow.
you went to when you couldn't go to the Poverty Supreme, or because you.
Poverty Supreme?
Well, everybody called Purity Supreme Poverty Supreme
Jeez.
back in those days.
We should do a whole show on food establishments
things-
in Cambridge.
things
And
that
invite
were.
somebody that knows this stuff.
Yeah,
That would
really,
be fascinating.
Now,
All right, well, that's funny.
one of the other things. Oh, actually, I'm going to just do a little show. and
Oh,
tell
you're gonna
real fast.
talk about that booklet thing.
Yeah, I'll do that right
That was
next
a lot
year.
of.
But it was
Oh.
funny. We were doing our election binge last
Yeah.
week, and then I was just rearranging
The
some things on
archive
the
is here.
shelves.
Yeah.
And I what did I come across? But it was one of the original 1941 booklets, Rules for Counting Ballots Under Proportional Representation, City of Cambridge, published by the city for the count.
You
The
got it
very
on
first-
eBay.
Got that one on eBay, and in the same package,
Wow.
this was the committee report that actually established the planning option under the state Massachusetts general
1938.
laws.
That's amazing.
That's right. So dated February 25th, 1938.
That's
So
amazing.
part of my
Yeah.
massive archive.
Do you have this is a segue, the nuclear arm, when we did a whole nuclear disarmament thing and somebody did a booklet, Cambridge did a booklet?
I actually had one of those.
'Cause
And
I used to have one too, but that's probably historic.
what I did was I actually loaned it to a candidate.
What was that, 30 years ago?
Something
25?
like that, yeah. I actually loaned it to a candidate
Uh-huh.
along with some other, I think
And you never
David
got it
Wiley and
back?
stuff, and I never came
No,
back.
don't do that anymore.
I should, yeah, because that was something
Yeah.
that would have
Yeah.
been a real keeper.
It's probably on eBay.
Right.
All right, so let's
Now-
talk about this,
And one
because
of
I don't
the,
understand
one of the other
this.
items
Yeah.
on the agenda, there was I think it was an order in the previous city council meeting, calling on the city to mail to every resident of the city a little booklet, or every household in the city,
Okay,
say it correctly,
yeah.
a little booklet called Street Code, right? And Street Code, which is says rules for etiquette for getting there together.
And it's all
So it
mobility,
published last year.
pedestrians,
Yeah, I mean
cars,
it's
bicyclists, and vehicles.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's in principle. I mean, it's really it's relatively short and sweet,
Mhm.
not too extensive. It's about 20 pages total, and little mini booklet pages at that. With
Is
motor
community
vehicles,
development
buses.
Put this together?
This is I think it would be the people within community development, but
So it already exists?
yeah, it
Oh.
exists, and they've had them little stacked out and.
So what
344
is the new
Broadway.
order for? To mail it?
Yeah, basically to make sure there's
Oh.
enough, and then spread them out wildly. And
I see.
And it was interesting because normally I would think, well, all right, is it justified? Is the expense justified?
Yeah.
Because if
You have
people
to print a lot more.
people might just go and go, chuck this, right?
Right, yeah,
So is it really worth it? I think that's a valid question.
yeah.
On the other hand, if you're sending out something citywide anyway, maybe it's something you could put as
If you could put inside,
stuffer
yeah, right.
go in with it.
Right.
It's relatively short and sweet. There are some
And
parts of it.
is it
that
online?
I don't know if it's online.
See,
I
it
would
should be
bet that it
online, and
is.
there should be people that say, look, I don't want you to send me something, but I'll look for it online.
Right.
Although it is nice to have something in your
Yeah.
hand.
But in it is inadequate in some ways.
In which ways? I know you mentioned something.
Just in terms of reducing risk. For example,
No.
if they say, again, maybe I'm being too much of a stickler about
Yeah.
this, but if they say you should have if you're biking at night, you should have a light, right? Yeah, but the truth is that I see bicycles with lights, but they don't ever check the batteries. They say formally I have a light, but it's so dim that you could
Yeah.
never
Well,
ever see it at night.
So they should say working lights,
Yeah, they really should.
visible working lights.
Yeah, and they
but
should-
maybe it's implied. If you have a
Right.
light, you should know if it's on or not.
Right, but
Right.
they really should put a little more emphasis on the bright clothing, the working lights, make sure they're
Yeah.
in good working order.
Right.
Do that. There are a few other things in here, like I've got a personal grudge about the way they lay out bicycle infrastructure, where they put they actively locate cyclists to the right of right turning vehicles. Some years ago, they were actually doing these sort of weaving lanes that I think were exactly the right way to do it.
In other words, the bicycles go ahead of the turning.
Yeah, that's one way to do it. Is you have
Yeah.
a bike box, so you bring the
Yeah.
bicyclists just up front, and this way when
I've
the light
seen that in
changes, they go.
Somerville.
Yeah, no, we have them a lot
Do
in
we?
Cambridge now
Yeah.
too. That's a good thing.
Okay.
No question about that. But what I don't like is
Yeah.
when they put like a solid line right up.
Yeah,
To
it's
the
confusing.
curb.
Yeah.
The cyclists really need to sort of protect themselves first.
Yeah, I think it's the onus is on
Yeah.
the cyclist to
And-
see if someone's turning.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and what that means is you should really, as a cyclist, try never to be to the right of a vehicle that may possibly be
Right,
turning
if it's a
right.
street that
Right.
can turn, yeah.
But
Yeah.
Cambridge is rolling out bicycle infrastructure that says, no, we want you there. And
Well,
that's kind of an issue. Anyway, I think this is going to become, because, and I'll speak quite frankly about this, I think that they made some extraordinary strategic errors this year in this council term
Oh,
in how
okay.
they were rolling out
Yeah.
this type of infrastructure.
it made it onto Jim Browdy's show last night and also
Oh,
on his on GBH today, local.
Yeah.
They did an interview with Denise Sands.
Yeah, I mean, they sort of took this sort of a radicalized view that we have to just push it, whether it's right or wrong or indifferent, and
That was kind of
and
the
they
gist of this
created
thing.
their
They
own
did it too
backlash.
fast. Yeah.
And now I think they have to basically do some mop up and sort of say, okay. But the problem is now you've got people who are entrenched on one side saying, no, we have to defend what we've put out
Yeah.
there, and other people saying, yeah, but what you put out there is not the best option.
Well, hopefully with the new council, there'll be some coming together.
I hope so.
It's not like the federal government, where they can actually work together and come up with some things.
Yeah, you could actually, I think, maybe this is
Yeah.
my own perception, but what I perceived happening at the council meeting last night is there's different schools of thought. Like, to me, without question, Craig Kelly has been the number one person advocating for understanding bicycle safety.
Yeah, that's the one
for-
thing I really respect
Honestly,
him
he's-
for, because he's a cyclist. He doesn't even
Right.
own a car, but he's very
Yeah.
sensible
But
about all
as
that.
long as
Yeah.
he's been on the city council,
Yeah.
he's been the man, there's no
Yeah.
question about it. But, Councilor Devereaux is sort of trying to, insert herself as well as sort
Right.
of the biggest
Her base,
proponent.
yeah,
But I don't know that she's necessarily has the same credentials
yeah,
in terms of fully understanding bicycle
Yeah.
safety as Craig does.
yeah,
So you can kind of see this sort of interesting dynamic playing out where Craig would say one thing and
yeah.
Jim Devereaux would try and do that, and then they would go back and forth.
So what was the thing about this? Because you mentioned this. That
Well, I
there
think
was
they passed it, but I think it's ultimately
was
the
whether
city
it should be
manager
mailed,
doesn't, is no obligation, we will do this. And maybe there'll be sort of a different version, maybe a trimmed down version.
Right.
Hard to say, but it was definitely a source of some conflict
Yeah,
in there. Partly, I don't expect these things to be controversial at all, but you can kind of see it's almost the discussion last night was almost like a proxy for the last year and a half of controversy over how you're supposed to deal with bicycle safety and infrastructure. Right? So, and I think until they settle this and come up with a better process
yeah,
than the one that they screwed up for
Yeah.
the last year and a
Yeah.
half or two, which was really largely driven by this sort of a kind of a radicalist way of doing things, rather than what I think is the more Cambridge way of doing things, which is where you get a lot of stakeholders together and you hammer out the best one that most people can live with. It might take a little longer, but you end up with a lot more buy-in from a lot more people that way. So I hope they can figure that out. I just think it would be so much better. But people are staking out turf. Now there's one group called.
well, there's a recent group that's
Well,
like
there's-
Robert Skandarian and
Yeah.
Denise Jillison.
So there's a group called Cambridge Bike Safety, which is
Yeah.
the one that was getting very political in the last election cycle. And then there's another group that's formed
This newer one, right?
called it's called Safety for All or something like that. Safe Streets for All,
Yeah.
I think it's called. And it's interesting because there is I think there's a pretty clear generational divide between the two groups.
Seem older. Yeah.
Yeah, so the one is sort of people who are older who are a little more focused on motor vehicle operators who are fearful of killing a cyclist because of the way things are laid out. They are concerned about being able to safely walk without getting hit by cyclists whizzing by fast.
Yeah.
And they also want access to a curb, like if you want to pull up in front of a pharmacy to go in there, and that's part of their
There's also
intention.
Businesses that have deliveries coming to them. There's a lot of issues here.
And actually Craig, again, to Craig's credit,
Yeah.
he has brought up that issue about what the future is going to look like in terms of, access
You're
to
not going to get
curbs.
rid of things
you know,
getting delivered to
but-
people.
right,
UPS trucks and
and
FedEx and
in addition
and
to
food
buses,
sources. Right.
we have this sort of quasi-transit now of Uber
Oh,
and
don't
Lyft,
even with that.
and we don't even know where that's all.
They stop
gonna
anywhere
go.
they want, but anyway.
Right. Well, the thing is that
I know.
if you lay out the
Yeah.
infrastructure where they have no place to pull
Yeah.
over, they're
Yeah.
either going to have
They're
to
gonna go
stop
into
in the middle of
lanes.
traffic or pull over into a bike lane or whatever.
That's
and
what they're going to do.
Nobody's going to be
Right.
happy with this. And
Yeah.
and honestly, the way they sort of laid this all out, they
And
didn't
with
take
those
any of this
and with
into consideration.
those parking spaces, and we have the bike lane, and then whatever
Yeah.
you have someone getting out on the passenger side into a
Yeah.
bike lane,
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of imperfection in the way this was all done, and
where before they were
Yeah.
getting out to the curb. Whatever.
right. So in addition to other things, this is definitely going to be one of the topics of the
Yeah.
next city council term, which really starts in less than a month. So
Okay,
Anyway.
so we will return.
we'll be back in another 3 minutes
Yeah.
on Cambridge Inside Out.